some of the biggest turning points, if we think about it, actually have been rooted in protests. So if we think about, if we think about suffragettes, and we think about obviously, sort of women getting the vote, for example, or how that's also expanded in different situations, that's been really, really critical in terms of how we've gone forward. I also think of late, obviously, it would be a complete remiss to completely ignore the fact that we've had Black Lives Matter sort of global sort of gatherings happening, or sort of different representations of that happening all over the world. And I think this is really critical right now. And also when we look back at civil rights, when we look at LGBT rights, that started off as a form of protest. And that's something I think we really, really need to look at and really embrace, because I think if we hear the word activist, or if we hear the word protest, we get a bit worried. And particularly in corporate settings, we're a bit like, oh no, it's this sort of deviancy. But actually, if we think about it, the equalities and the rights that we have today were born out of people protesting.
Pew Research study noted that 8 in 10 adults found that honesty, intelligence, and decisiveness are considered absolutely essential in leadership. And that's something that was agreed across the board by people of all genders. And so, I think that those qualities and characteristics definitely ring true. But in a time like this, I think what we're also really looking to as leaders is, can you be adaptable and can you be compassionate?
I think fundamentally you should have an open mindset, one where one is constantly learning, and I would say learning because it starts with an experience. It could even be a conversation like this, which is learning. Because you're then reflecting on what's been spoken. Then you're figuring out whether there are better ways to do things.
And masculinity in itself, I think this is a really good place to start with this. Isn't necessarily a toxic thing, but where it becomes too much, where someone feels that they can't show their emotions or they can't seek help because they're scared of not seeming masculine or being seen as weak or vulnerable, that's where it becomes toxic. That is where it can be unhealthy to adopt and take these ideals of masculinity too far.
Most important thing is to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, irrespective of the gender. As an individual, if I am working in a team, I should know that, okay, there are 4 or 5 team members or 10 team members with me. What are their behavioral traits? What are their backgrounds they are coming from? I need to understand when I'm interacting with them, I'm dealing with them and getting the work done, or they are coming to me for any discussion. I need to be fully aware of those things. And I think that can be a good starting point to strike a balance and not to create any bias or to hurt anyone intentionally or unintentionally.
I've always viewed social mobility in its most simplest sense as having the resources, opportunity and empowerment to improve your overall quality of life as you see fit as an individual, or as much as you can, really. And so it's relative, of course, but it's having those things, resources, opportunity and empowerment to change your quality of life to a standard that you feel suits you, or that you aspire to.
And that might take some time and some research, but we can all do it. Anyone listening to this, it is a possibility for you to profess or to communicate how you're feeling in a way that can be received. And many times we just need a team to back us up.
I think more needs to be done, but the fact that it's so publicized now and we're talking about it, I think I can only point as that being progress.
This is the key to helping people feel like they belong in organisations, is that their identity is respected. Mm-hmm. And I think the big challenge is if elements of your identity aren't respected or ignored, I think that's when you feel like you don't belong in an organisation. That's when you don't feel included.
I think culture is all about diversity and inclusion, and it needs to be driven from everyone in the business, not just leadership and not just employees at every level. Every single person has to take accountability. If you look at the Harvard Business Review, it backs up the research that found that active and visible executive sponsorship is the top contributor to success of any change effort.